So Mosley actually deemed incompetent to stand trial in this case previously. He then spent months inside a state hospital and then was deemed by a judge competent to stand trial. He is facing 2 counts of first-degree murder in this case. The state is seeking the death penalty.
The police chief saying just a little while ago the body of little Talon Mosley was found here in the water in the mouth of an alligator at the park. Now, this 2-day search ended miles from where it first began at Talon and his mother's apartment. Talon and his mom, 20-year-old Passion Jeffrey, were last seen Wednesday evening. Passion was found dead in her St. Petersburg apartment yesterday afternoon. The chief tells us she was stabbed multiple times, already saying it was a very violent crime scene. The search for 2-year-old Talon spanned miles. St. Petersburg police say their investigation led them to the Dell Holmes Park, where they searched all day Friday.
March 29th, 2023 started like any celebration should. Family gathered in a St. Petersburg, Florida apartment, celebrating a young man's 21st birthday with cake, laughter, and the kind of ordinary joy that marks life's simple moments. Thomas Mosley was surrounded by his girlfriend Pahan Jeffrey, their 2-year-old son Talon, and extended family who loved them. By all accounts, it was a normal birthday party. But by the time the sun rose the next morning, that same apartment would become the scene of unspeakable horror, and a frantic search would grip an entire community. Around 5:15 in the evening, the last of the family members said their goodbyes and left the apartment. Only 3 people remained inside: Thomas Mosley, 20-year-old Pahan Jeffrey, and their toddler son Talon. What happened in the hours that followed would shock investigators, traumatize an entire police department, and leave a community asking how something so horrific could happen behind closed doors. At approximately 9:03 that same evening, Thomas Mosley arrived at his mother's house. But he wasn't alone, and he wasn't well. He had severe lacerations covering both his hands and arms. The injuries were serious enough that he needed immediate medical attention, and Mosley admitted himself to St. Anthony's Hospital for treatment. Back at the apartment, Pahan and Talon were alone, or so everyone thought. March 30th brought growing concern. Family members tried repeatedly to reach Pahan, but she wasn't answering her phone. The silence was unusual, unsettling. Worried relatives contacted the apartment complex management and asked them to perform a welfare check. When property management entered the unit, they discovered a scene of absolute carnage. Pahan Jeffrey was dead. The young mother had been stabbed over 100 times in an attack so brutal and sustained that it defied comprehension. This wasn't a crime of passion that lasted seconds. This was prolonged, deliberate violence that spoke to something far darker. Blood evidence throughout the apartment told the story of a struggle, of desperation, of a life violently taken. But the horror didn't end with Passion's body. 2-year-old Talon was missing. His toys lay scattered across the apartment. His belongings remained untouched. But the little boy himself had vanished into thin air. Law enforcement immediately issued an Amber Alert, and what began as a welfare check transformed into a desperate race against time. The community of St. Petersburg mobilized. Volunteers joined law enforcement in searching neighborhoods, parks, and any place a missing toddler might be found. Hours turned into a full day of searching. Hope mixed with dread as the clock ticked forward, and Talon remained missing. Then, on March 31st, searchers made a discovery near Lake Majori that would haunt everyone involved. Talon's small body was found in the mouth of an alligator. The image is almost too terrible to process. A 2-year-old child, barely begun in life, discovered in such a nightmarish way. The medical examiner later determined that Talon's cause of death was drowning. The little boy had been placed in the lake, where he drowned before the alligator found him. The investigation moved swiftly. All eyes turned to Thomas Mosley, the last person seen with both victims, and the man who had shown up at his mother's house with unexplained injuries just hours after the family left the birthday party. Detectives began piecing together a timeline, and what they found painted a damning picture. Surveillance footage and cell phone data tracked Mosley's movements on the night of March 29th. Records showed that around 8:42 in the evening, Mosley had traveled to the Lake Majori area, the same lake where Talon's body would later be discovered. From there, he drove approximately 10 blocks to his mother's home, arriving with those severe hand and arm lacerations around 9:03. The timeline was tight, deliberate, and telling. Inside the apartment, forensic investigators found even more evidence. A bloody fingerprint was discovered on a cleaning bottle that had been concealed under a bed. That fingerprint was identified as belonging to Thomas Mosley. On the bathroom floor, investigators documented a bloody shoe print bearing a distinctive Gucci emblem. Each piece of evidence built upon the last, creating a compelling case against the young father. St. Petersburg Police Chief Anthony Holloway would later reveal just how devastating this case was for first responders. The department had to hire clinical psychologists and bring in therapy dogs to help officers process the trauma of what they had witnessed. Experienced law enforcement professionals, people who had seen the worst of humanity, needed specialized help to cope with the brutality of this crime scene. On April 27, 2023, prosecutors filed a notice of intent to seek the death penalty against Thomas Mosley. He faced 2 counts of first-degree murder for the deaths of Pahan Jeffrey and Talon Mosley. Despite the overwhelming evidence, Mosley entered a plea of not guilty in May 2023, setting the stage for what would become a long and complicated legal journey. But the path to trial hit an unexpected obstacle. In October 2023, concerns arose about Mosley's mental competency to stand trial. A defendant must be able to understand the charges against them and assist in their own defense. If they cannot meet this basic standard, proceedings must be paused. After evaluation, a judge determined that Thomas Mosley was indeed incompetent to proceed and ordered him committed to the Department of Children and Families for treatment. Mosley spent 6 months at a state psychiatric hospital in Chattahoochee, Florida. During this time, he received treatment aimed at restoring his competency so that he could eventually face trial. The families of Pahan and Talon waited, their grief compounded by legal delays and uncertainty about whether justice would ever be served. In January 2024, Dr. Teresa Ashman Jones evaluated Mosley and found him competent to proceed. Her testimony revealed troubling details about Mosley's mental health history. He had reported attempting suicide 3 times since 2019. The third attempt occurred on his birthday in 2023, the same day as the murders. This raised complex questions about Mosley's state of mind, though competency to stand trial is a separate legal question from criminal responsibility. By June 2024, the court held hearings on Mosley's competency. After reviewing the evidence and expert testimony, the judge ultimately found Mosley competent to stand trial. The case could finally move forward more than a year after the crimes that had shocked St. Petersburg. Throughout these proceedings, the families of the victims have endured unimaginable pain. Pahan Jeffrey was a young mother whose life was stolen in the most violent way imaginable. Those who knew her remember a vibrant 20-year-old woman with her whole life ahead of her. Talon was just 2 years old, a toddler who should have been playing, learning, and experiencing the world with innocent wonder. Instead, his life was cut short before it truly began.
And out to the family and to his loved ones, we are sorry that it had to end this way.
St. Pete Police Chief Anthony Holloway said detectives saw an alligator with an object in its mouth at Del Holmes Park. That's across town from the apartment where Jeffrey was stabbed to death.
They fired 1 round to the alligator. The alligator dropped the object that he had in his mouth, and we were able to retrieve Talon's body intact.
Talon's father, Thomas Mosley, is charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder for both Talon and Passion's deaths.
We didn't want to find him this way, but at least we can bring some closure to that family now.
Earlier today, that family spoke about mother and son.
He's always calling his mom on his cell phone.
Yep, always.
He misses his mom. They call each other all the time. She really loved Talon.
Police don't know how Talon got to the lake or the cause of death for the toddler.
We just want to say that Talon is a beautiful little boy. And he's really loving and caring.
According to Chief Holloway, Thomas Mosley is still in the hospital. Police said Wednesday, the last time Passion and Talon were seen alive, was Mosley's 21st birthday.
The case raises haunting questions about domestic violence, mental health, and the signs that might have been missed. What happened in those hours between 5:15 when the family left and 9:03 when Mosley appeared at his mother's door? What drove a father to commit such unspeakable acts against his own child and the mother of that child? These questions may never be fully answered, even if Mosley is convicted. As of January 2026, Thomas Mosley remains in custody, still maintaining his not guilty plea despite the substantial evidence against him. Florida prosecutors continue to pursue the death penalty, believing that the brutality and premeditation of these crimes warrant the ultimate punishment. Mosley's pretrial is currently scheduled for April 9, 2026, representing another step toward a trial that has been delayed by competency issues and legal proceedings. The legal system moves slowly, particularly in death penalty cases where every procedural safeguard must be carefully followed. For the families waiting for justice, each delay extends their suffering. They cannot move forward, cannot find closure, while the case remains unresolved. Yet the constitutional rights of the accused must also be protected, creating a tension between the desire for swift justice and the requirement for fair proceedings. This case serves as a stark reminder of how quickly violence can erupt, even in seemingly ordinary circumstances. A birthday party, a family gathering, the routine rhythms of daily life can all be shattered in moments. The signs of domestic violence are not always visible to outsiders, and by the time they become apparent, it may already be too late. For the St. Petersburg community, the Mosley case represents a collective trauma. The image of little Talon, the brutality inflicted on Pahan, and the betrayal by someone who should have protected them has left scars that extend far beyond the immediate families. Residents were reminded that evil can exist anywhere, that safety is never guaranteed, and that the most vulnerable among us need protection that sometimes fails to materialize. As this case moves toward trial, the questions surrounding motive, mental state, and culpability will be examined in detail. The evidence appears overwhelming, but the legal process requires that every element be proven beyond reasonable doubt. Mosley's defense attorneys will have the opportunity to present their case, to challenge the evidence, and to argue for their client's life even if conviction seems inevitable. The death penalty itself remains controversial, with strong arguments on both sides about its morality, effectiveness, and application. In this case, prosecutors clearly believe that the deliberate murder of a young mother and a toddler, allegedly committed by someone who should have loved and protected them, represents the kind of crime that justifies capital punishment. Whether a jury will agree remains to be seen. What cannot be disputed is the immense loss suffered by two families who will never be the same. Pahan Jeffrey's relatives have lost a daughter, a sister, a niece whose laughter and presence enriched their lives. Talon's family has been robbed of watching him grow, of seeing who he might have become, of all the moments and milestones that should have stretched out before him for decades to come. As we await the next chapter in this legal saga, we're left to reflect on the fragility of life and the capacity for human cruelty that occasionally surfaces in the most unexpected places. The Thomas Mosley case stands as a testament to the work of law enforcement, the resilience of communities in the face of tragedy, and the long, difficult road to justice that victims' families must travel. Whatever the ultimate outcome, nothing will bring back Pahan and Talon, but perhaps the legal process can provide some measure of accountability and prevent similar tragedies in the future. The Mosley case reminds us why we do what we do here at Crime Shadows. These aren't just stories, they're real lives, real families still waiting for justice, and real communities forever changed by tragedy. If you found this coverage informative and respectful to the victims, please consider subscribing to Crime Shadows. Your subscription helps us continue bringing you thoroughly researched, factual true crime content that honors those we've lost. Hit that like button if this video kept you informed, and share it with anyone interested in following this case as it moves toward trial. The more people who understand these stories, the more we keep the memory of victims like Pahan and Talon alive. Thank you for watching Crime Shadows, where we bring truth out of darkness. We'll see you in the next one.